as well as the Battle of Kennesaw. And we're also going to look at some of the artifacts that was left behind from some of the soldiers that fought here. We begin our timeline with the election of President Lincoln on November 6, 1860. After that, it was just a domino effect of states in the South that was succeeding, which also led to the bombardment of Fort Sumter. Well, that upset Lincoln to the point 3 days later, he's calling for 75,000 volunteers to stop the rebellion. And then, it just leads up to our first land battle, which is the Battle of Manassas or Bull Run. Does anyone know why it has two different names? Okay, so the South named it Manassas after the city or the town in that area. The Northerners named it Bull Run because there was a stream that ran through the battlefield. Most of these guys that signed up anyways thought that this war would be over pretty quick, so they just signed like 90-day contracts because they didn't think they were going to be able to see any action. But we all know that the war lasted longer than 3 months. And the Civil War was known for mass casualties, totaling 620,000 casualties. Oh yeah. Well, the reason why they stopped at 1864 is because the Atlanta campaign here. Because after Kennesaw fell, Kennesaw was the last point for the Union to get to Atlanta. So once they reached Atlanta was basically destroyed on September 2nd, 1864, and then that's when Sherman began his march to sea and eventually captured Savannah. But the Civil War was known for mass casualties because if you see in 1863 Gettysburg that had over 50,000 casualties, and then you had Chickamauga in September that had over 30,000 casualties. Now, have you guys heard of the Battle of Antietam? Now, that was the most deadliest battle and casualties in one day. Just in one day, they lost over 20,000 men. But with that, we're going to go ahead and head in, and we're going to take a look at some of the
No, you're not actually not allowed to leave. So
yeah, because it was either 90 days or some of them even signed 3 years.
Yeah,
and some of them that they thought since their unit was disbanded that they could just go home, but that's not how that worked.
They were pretty much held against the will.
Yeah, and the movie that they have out, Gettysburg, is a prime example of that with the 20th Maine. When the 2nd Maine was disbanded, they thought they could just go home, but then they were later captured and then thrown in with the 20th Maine. And then he also had the command, like, either you can fight with us or you can just be shot. But he was like, I'm not going to shoot my men from my home state. So right here, this is the northern side. Right behind Grant, you have President Lincoln. In front of him, that is General Grant. Now, interesting enough, Grant was the commander of the whole Union Army. So this rank is the first time that anybody held this rank since George Washington. So that was, and then under Grant, you have Major General William T. Sherman. Now, he was the commander of the Division of Mississippi, but he was also the commander of the Army of the Tennessee, the Army of the Cumberland, and the Army of the Ohio. And then these were the officers that was in charge of the units. And now these armies had a total of 110,000 men that he was watching. Now, when we were talking about Manassas and Bull Run, how they named it after the stream, that kind of goes into their army as well. When it says of the, they were naming them after major rivers, the Tennessee River, the Ohio River, and the Southerners would name their armies after states. So right here behind there, you would have President Jeff Davis. In front of him was Joseph Johnston. You have Hood to the left or to the right. Um, Now, when Joseph E. Johnston was a high-ranking officer before the Civil War, and when he decided to get into the Civil War, to join the Confederates, he thought he was going to get the same rank. But when he signed up, he was actually placed fifth on the list. So it's pretty. And Jeff Davis and Johnston didn't really care for each other, which also Bragg over here was also not friends with with Joseph Johnston too. And that's one of the things that plagued the Confederates throughout the Civil War was micromanaging. Because here it is in 1864, the Confederates already witnessed several key members being killed or their generals being killed. You had Sidney Johnston that was killed in Shiloh. Stonewall was killed in Chancellorsville. And then right here, Leonardus Polk, who was also a bishop in a church before he joined the Confederacy, he was actually killed on Pine Mountain after a cannonball pierced his chest. And then right here is the mayor of Georgia, Joe Brown, who also had a brother that was actually killed during the Battle of Kennesaw when he was part of the Georgia militia or the Georgia state line. And then right over here, all these items that you see in this case was manufactured in Georgia. And that's what led to Sherman and Grant coming up with a plan to attack and take control of Atlanta, because Atlanta at the time had 4 railroads that met in the center of Atlanta that would help supply the Confederates. So they knew if they could get Atlanta in a timely manner, they would be able to, handicap the South from getting supplies. Now, this interesting thing in the very back is Joe Brown Pike. That was made by Joseph Brown, the mayor of Georgia. He actually got the idea from Stonewall Jackson, who was famous for, using the bayonet. He had 7,000 of these made, being at $5 a piece. In 1864, that would give you a total of $35,000. Now, there's only 4 in existence today. But also interesting, they had all these made, but none of them ever seen action. Now, does anybody know the percentage of casualties caused by a bayonet in the Civil War? It was only 1%. So it was a very small percentage of bayonets. Now, if you look at the 58 caliber gun, you see how it has like discoloration, a lot of different colors. So why that is a lot of people in the South was handing over silverware and household items that they can melt down to make these weapons and help the South. The women of the South would sew the socks. So as you can see, the government of the South was not doing its due diligence and providing. It was mostly the people in the South, which in the end, it gave the South and the soldiers faith that they have people that are willing to support them in their cause, and what gave them the option to keep fighting. And then this one is our communications. Now, this is not a real map, but this is similar to a map that William T. Sherman used with his other officers, because he was able to have a map created, because he was able to obtain a way to get into like a printing press to make that. Now, with that map in mind, I'm going to show you a very interesting map that the Confederates made that was hand-drawn on a handkerchief. So remember that map, and then I want to show you that one over here in the very back. But also, a way that they communicated, they have a white flag with a red square that they would wave in the air in certain ways. to be able to send codes and stuff like that to the soldiers down below. But unfortunately, it didn't work out so well with the Confederates because the Union was able to actually decipher their code, and they would soon find that out when you remember the Battle of Cobb's Farm on June 22nd, 1864. And that's why that attack fell. And then right here is the flags. This is a regiment flag, the Cherokee Dragoons. This was a unit out of Cherokee County. Now on the top right here, the lettering, they were real big on that whole Greek mythology kind of thing with the Spartans. So basically, that old saying like the man would go to war with his sword or come home upon it. Well, that's kind of what they had on the top as well. And then this was the first national flag, which, they had this around March 5th, 1861. But they later had to move to a second one, which is this one right here. Because at the beginning, when they had this flag at the Battle of Manassas, it was kind of similar to the Union flag. So they didn't really know who was friends, who was foes. And then it got worse because when they created this one in May of 1863, well, then they had to adopt another one because with it being all white, it started looking like a surrender flag. The only thing is, after this one was adopted to be their flag, it wasn't long after when this was adopted that the war was already over. So it wasn't even able to fly. And then this is another regiment flag. So a lot of these regiments, you could say that they were like kids trying to capture each other's flags. And there are some regiments that even cut their flags when they knew that they were about to be captured, so nobody can get a hold of them. And then right here, this is our medicine display. Now, this surgeon box is actually was a Union surgeon box that was actually captured during the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain and was used by a Confederate surgeon. I think the most eerie thing that I've seen that I know of is that wearing jewelry. So when they had somebody that was passed, they would actually put a piece of their hair inside there, and so that's pretty neat to like learn all. And then that's a 58 caliber mini ball, which is like that. So that's a mini ball, and then that's after it goes in, and they were able to remove it. If you would like, you guys can hold it too, just to see how heavy it is. And then this is a musket ball. So you can just, and the mini ball was designed by a Frenchman named Claude Minet, who came up with the mini ball. And then this is a piece of artillery shell. Now, we remember the Cherokee Dragoons. This is a veteran coming home holding the flag. And then this is a dog tag that they could purchase during the war. And as you can see on the top, it says the War of 1861. Because they never thought it was going to go longer than, 1861. So, interesting.
Yeah.
And then that's a bone saw that you most commonly use.
That's what I thought that might be.
Yeah. Now the most casualties in the Civil War was not wounds from the battlefield. It was actually diseases. The two diseases that was really bad was dysentery and gangrene. So when they amputated, they had to wrap it and then put cold water on it because it's already too hot and getting warm that it would cause gangrene if it wasn't cool. And now this is the artillery section. Now these are different pieces of artillery. You have the solid shot, which is the first one, and then this one right here, the case shot. They would pack items in there like nails and screws and stuff, and it would explode in midair. So it would do more damage.
Yeah.
The canister shot is right before they got captured. Before the cannons got captured, they would fire one last time, and it would turn the cannon into basically a shotgun. Now these right here is personal items from some of the soldiers. Here's one of the toothbrushes that they used that was made out of bone. The bristles or the brush right there was made out of boar chin hair. So a lot of these guys did a lot of things common. I don't know. Have you guys heard about the memorial to James McPherson that was killed in East Atlanta? How he was killed is he accidentally stumbled into a Confederate camp, and as he was trying to ride away, he was actually shot and killed. So a lot of these guys had a lot of things in common. They were very, the same. There wasn't no difference with them. It's just it was basically they just had a lot of disagreements. And then these are the different rifles that they had. Because how I was showing you the 58 caliber where they were melting them down. Eventually, they were able to get the Enfield from London or England that was issued to the Confederates. And this is our timeline for the battle. But there's that map that I told you I was hand. So, our hand drawn on a handkerchief and given to the cavalry commander of Joseph Wheeler of the different positions. It's crazy how they had it all hand drawn.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And that was another regiment flag too behind there. This, as you can see, that's some of these were the battles of Atlanta. Like Utah Creek that you can see today. And why it says Hood is Hood that we seen earlier. He replaced Johnston after Johnston decided to retreat across the Chattahoochee River and give up their defensive position here. And that actually really irritated President Davis, so he replaced Hood. Because Johnston or General Bragg was the commander here before, of the Army of Tennessee before Johnston. Now, this cannon, there's a cutout of William T. Sherman and his horse, Duke. And then this cannon was actually this cannon was from the 1st New York Light Artillery that actually seen action not only here at Battle of Kennesaw but also at Resaca as well as New Hope. Now it was at Chickamauga, and when they were able, it was actually this picture right here. They were able to locate the serial number, and that's how they found it at Chickamauga. And then they worked out a trade and brought it back home. This picture would be where this cannon is sitting would be where the Fox Theater is today. It's a very unique. This is a battle map of Kennesaw, and then right down here is the angle, which would be the dead angle, which is Cheatham Hill. Now Sherman. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
So Sherman had two on July 27th, 1864. Sherman launched 2 attacks, one on the north and one on the south. His major assault came in the middle because that's where his attention was, is trying to break the middle of the line. Now, after the tour at 2:15, they're going to be showing the movie in the auditorium that showcases the whole battle and exactly how it was all done. And also shows you a point where during the day they had the smell was, the smell of the corpse on the ground was so bad that they actually created a truce for like the day. And it was where Union and Confederate was actually hanging out with each other, playing cards and doing all that. And then the next day they would go back to shooting one another. So it's different.
Yeah.
And then this is Atlanta during, this is what Atlanta was starting to look like after the Civil War and Reconstruction, because this one was never replaced.
It's still like that now. Do they keep it that way? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this is some of the path they did, because they when they captured certain areas, especially I don't know if you guys been to Alatoona Pass, the battlefield over there in Cartersville, they have a Sherman necktie where when they capture certain areas, they would damage the railroad. They would take it up and twist it so the other people can't use it.
Right.
So
Well, they bent the
Oh, is
railroad,
that it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
so they would bend them like that.
yeah.
yeah, they would bend it right
You
here.
couldn't use that piece to ever run a train on again.
No, and that's actually kind of what they did over there at Alatoona Pass. The South was doing it, the North was. So they were basically trying to handicap each other as much as possible. And in this section, towards the end of the tour is some of the men that actually fought here. Now, have you guys been to the Pigeon Hill right up here?
This is all we've been to.
Oh
Yeah.
wow!
Certainly.
Well, when you guys go straight, right before you get into Pigeon Hill, that open field where you see that monument, that's where they had I think it was the 63rd Georgia, and two Union regiments that actually was in hand-to-hand combat with each other in that field, where a lot of them was killed fighting each other with their bare hands. And this is one of the youngest to die here. So I mean, as you can see, it's just this whole war was just one big tragedy that to have to occur. And then that's Marietta National Cemetery. And then down the road is the Confederate Cemetery, which Marietta Confederate Cemetery actually began. They started the construction of Marietta Confederate Cemetery after the train wreck in Emerson during the Civil War. When they had a train wreck during the Civil War, that's what started the.
They had to put them somewhere.
Yeah.
See, all these ribbons are from Greensburg. They're in
They're all Greensburg, Indiana.
And then Patrick Clayburn. I mean, he wasn't killed here, but he fought. And he fought in a lot of towns here in the South. And Joseph Wheeler, that was the one that they gave to that hand drawing. That was pretty neat to see how they drew that whole thing.
Right.
This was the Confederates' casualty report of the battle or the Atlanta campaign. So I mean, you can see the numbers was just outrageous.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And then that tree was actually given to the park in 1950s by a farmer that lived in the area.
Oh, wow.
That you can see the two cannon balls in there. Even though it was struck, it was still growing, still
Yeah,
healing.
that's what I was going to say.
So,
Neat.
someone was hiding behind that tree.
Yeah.
You know.
And then this is a Bible that was actually stolen out of a Confederate home. And then after the war, he felt bad and contacted the Confederate. And I guess they worked out a deal where he would help pay the postage and was able to come back home. So.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you have any questions or if I missed anything in the tour, you're more than welcome to walk through. I know at 2:15 we're going to hold a, they're going to play the video in the auditorium. I would strongly recommend watching it. I mean, it's a good video. It gives, like when I was talking about the attack on the south and the north, and also in the center, it gives you a full detail of his whole plan. And also, when this battle went on, it rained for 3 weeks before it started. So. Oh yeah, it was a mess. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed, and thank you again for coming to Kennesaw.
Thanks for telling us the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, that was good.
First
The highlights
museum
right
show.
after we all the